To know if this is a water or not. Right here. And does anyone know how to line up the waters?
MML.
MML and what degree?
37.
37. Bingo. Awesome. Good job remembering that. So this is a key head position that you guys need to know right here.
Very much so. We're just going to review some of this anatomy because what I was saying last week, there's never an image you want to put a big star on. They're not all important, but this one here in particular, you want to know this one inside and out, left and right, up and down. Every single label on this image, you need to memorize. Because like Jalen said, this is one of those images that the registry really loves to fall back on. It's one of those guaranteed things you're going to see on your exam, plus mine as well. But let's just go through these one by one, make sure we know what we're looking at. Of course, frontal sinus at the very top. Can we see the frontal sinuses? Yes?
Yeah.
See if there's two, side by side, a left and a right. By the way, when you see sinuses in a pair, you do label them left and right. So keep that in mind. If you get a hot spot exam, and I say the right frontal sinus, you're going to put that marker over here. If I say the left frontal sinus, you're going to put it over here. You're not going to. I'm not just going to say sinus. You just put it anywhere you want. Once again, let me say that when a sinus group comes in a pair, there is a left versus right. Just like you have a left and right maxillary, left and right ethmoid, so on and so forth. Keep that in mind. As we move down, of course, we can really see it quite well in this one. You see a big, long, straight line right there? That's that bony nasal septum, which is formed by what two parts? Perpendicular plates of the ethmoid and the vomer, correct. Well, man, that is such a good test question. I've seen that for some reason. Just it's on the top of my head. So I feel like that's going to be a test question. Where you at on that one, Jamie?
Next question. Right
There you go.
A little late to the party, but.
Of course, right here, guys, a little bit harder to see, but this is going to be that anterior nasal spine. How do we find that? Well, first off, we can see the teeth on the maxillary bones right here. And then right above that is this point right here, that campion. That's going to be that anterior nasal spine. Please remember that piece of anatomy, another very important one. Maxillary sinuses. Now we have a nice label here, but can we point out those maxillary sinuses? Because I'm telling you, for some reason, Jalen, your class still, y'all just cannot label these sinuses correctly to save your life. But let's look closely. Here are our two maxillary sinuses. We have a left, we have a right. What distinct shape do the maxillary sinuses have? Triangle. You can't miss them. They look like a triangle on that water's x-ray. Please remember that is your maxillary sinuses. Right here in between the nose, we have two more sinuses, which are typically kind of closer to the tear ducts when we're in a Caldwell. You'll know which ones I'm talking about. The ethmoid. Please remember the ethmoids are right here, left and right. So we have frontals, ethmoid, maxillaries. There's one that we can't really see, that being the sphenoid. The only way we can see the sphenoid sinus on a water's view is if we open the patient's mouth. But this patient's mouth is closed, so the teeth are obstructing it. But where would it be approximately? Right here. You can kind of see a little round bubble right there. That's the sphenoid, but we're not getting an ideal look because the teeth are blocking it. Make sense? Now, like Jalen said, one way that we can tell that this water has been correctly positioned, and the way we know this is not a Caldwell, is once again going back to those good old petrous ridges. These petrous ridges, as he said, are located below the maxillary sinuses. If we're in a Caldwell, remember we looked at those other PAs, where do those petrous ridges populate? Lower one-third of the orbits. So when I look at the orbits, do I see a petrous ridge? I do not, but I see them way down here. Are we still seeing those, by the way?
Yeah.
You've got to know where those petrous ridges are. They have that nice, distinct line. They are well below the maxillaries, therefore we can confirm that's a waters that's been positioned correctly. Now what else do we look at here? Of course, the maxillary bones. Now we also have the coronoid process and the condyle of the mandible. A little bit harder to see. If you look on the TV screens, you can see them a little bit better because the quality on this projector is not as good. But I want you to realize those two parts of the mandible are viewable on waters. We have a little spike right here. It's kind of right below the maxillary, a little bit more lateral. We have a spike right here. And a little bit hard to see on this side, but it's about right here. That's going to be those coronoid processes. I'm sorry, right here.
Yeah, there you go.
Our coronoid processes of the mandible.
Did you say this is a spike?
It's a little spike right here and right here. Look at the two little spikes. That's the coronoid processes of our mandibles. Right here, you see kind of like a little shape. It's round, kind of going to the side. A little bit hard to see on here, but like I said, if you look on the TV monitor, That's that condyle of the mandible, also called the condyloid process or the condylar process. Remember we probably went over those three names on the mandible? Once again, not the best image for seeing that, but we can visualize. And I have some other example images to show you what I'm talking about as we move on. It shows it a little bit more distinctly. This one, it's a little bit superimposed, so hard to see. I can't even see it on this side. I think it's about right here, if I'm guessing. But usually you can see it a little more clearly. Not the best on this image, but I'll show you what I'm talking about as we move forward. Now, we also have those mastoid air cells, sometimes just simplified to the word mastoid. These are not sinuses, even though they are black. They're black because they have air in it, but they're only the mastoid air cells. So don't make that mistake. We have 4 sinus groups, that being frontal, maxillary, ethmoid, sphenoid. Then we have mastoid air cells, which are located in the temporal bone behind the ears. And of course, there's those gunions right there. You'll see the gunions, gonions, or mandibular angles. See those, right? Yes? You see those? And of course, I hope we know this by now. Donahue process, which is located on what C vertebrae? C2, also called the axis. Not labeled, but what's that round shape there? Foramen magnum, which is located on what? The occipital bone, which we see right here. I always feel like that comes like a frog mouth, like an open frog's mouth, like you're looking down his throat. Is it just me? I guess it's just me.
So Louisiana.
Reminds me of a frog, or like a bird's mouth, you know, when they're like waiting for their food. That's what it looks like to me. Anyways, it's making sense so far, guys. Aside from those condyles being a little hard to see, I'm going to show y'all some better examples as we move forward.
What did you say the bony nasal septum is?
The bony nasal septum is made of the perpendicular plate of the ethmoid and the vomer. Perpendicular plate is the superior part. The vomer is the inferior part. All right, let's go to the next image. Now, what are we looking at here? This is supposed to be it's a lateral facial bones. So we can really see some more distinct anatomy here. Not a lot labeled, but we're going to go over a lot. So let's look very closely. Let's start at the top. Do we see the condyle a little bit better on this one? What's from that TMJ? See that very first label up here? That's that condyloid process we were talking about. You'll see it fit into the TMJ right here. Big thing that we're looking for. TMJ, once again, is the union of that mandible to that temporal bone. Right here, we have that coronoid process. A little bit superimposed on the orbital wall here, but it makes a little distinct spike again. Here's the mandibular angle. You'll see it now that I'm outlining it. Here's the condyle. Here's the mandibular angle. It comes up to that coronoid process right here. Now, right in front of that, we have one of those very important sinus groups again. Y'all know what sinus group this is? That's the maxillary sinuses. Very distinct. They are right above the maxillary bone. You can't miss it. Please remember that. People have a lot of trouble remembering those sinus groups. If I move up to the top, you'll see that little saddle shape again. Do you remember what that was? Let's go over the parts of the cella turcica again. Jalen, if you don't mind pointing to the front part at cella turcica, where it goes up.
Where's the cell turcica?
My glasses.
Yeah, where are your
That's
glasses?
what they all
I
say.
think they broke.
They broke.
Crazy weekend.
Crazy weekend.
Oh, these
That's
are-
missed
Help you out. Let me help you out. All right, let's start at the front of that cell turcica, guys, right here. What was that first part called?
Interior clinical process.
Interior clinoid, not clinical.
You say
What you knew?
clinical?
Y'all said clinical, clinoid?
Interior clinoid process.
You knew what I was saying.
Hey.
It dips down to the cella turcica, goes back up to the
Posterior.
posterior. Right behind it is the what?
Dorsum cell.
Dorsum celli, and right below it is the old clavus. Now, look back to the cella turcica. Y'all see that distinct black bubble there? That's that sphenoid sinus. Sphenoid sinus. Sphenoid sinus is always located directly below the cella turcica. You can't miss it. Now, not to be confused with the one that these poor seniors can't seem to label right. I gotta pick on you a little bit. There is a sinus group right here above the maxillary. See, someone said frontal, it's incorrect.
It's
People always seem to
ethmoid.
miss this one. That's the ethmoids. So keep that in mind because these all are right next to each other, especially on the lateral. Right below the cella is sphenoid. Right in front of it is ethmoid, and then right below it is maxillary. Frontal is cut off, we can't see it on this x-ray. Frontal has to be on the what bone? Frontal bone, frontal bone. Now as we move down, we can see the distinct outline of that mandible. That long vertical portion is called the what, guys? It's right there. Not a trick question, the word's right there. Ramus. Ramus, I know it's Monday, but come on guys, I'm tired too. This little point down here, of course, is the gonion or angle of the mandible. The horizontal portion being the body, the tip of the chin being the, what are those little grooves that the teeth fit into? Alveolar processes, of which we have them on the mandible and the maxillary bone. What's this white stuff here?
Feeling.
That's a bunch of cavities. That's fillings. Yeah, represent a lot of cavities. Yes. What is this thing here? That's C1, also called the atlas. What's that?
Bless you.
Bless you. What's that hole there? That's located on what cranial bone? Temporal. What are these little air pockets called? Mastoid air cells. We doing okay? Making sense? What are the other names for mandibular condyle? Condylar and condyloid process. Malar is going to be on the zygomatic bone, by the way, which we can't really see on this one. All right. So one more time, guys, I want to review these science groups because, once again, if there's anything I can guarantee you're going to see on that big bad registry, it's going to be these science groups. We have the one right here below the cella called the what? Over here in front of it is the, by the way, let me make sure I'm outlining this properly for you guys. This is all sphenoid right here. It's quite a large sinus. The ethmoid is that thin strip there. Do y'all see that? And then of course this big old thing here, maxillary. Do you have your hand raised?
Yeah.
Let's see.
I don't, the cellular circuit is not that visible here.
Look really close. It might be.
See like a distinct.
See, there's the posterior and anterior colloid processes. You see that U shape right there? And it might be that this is, well, no, they're not rotated. I know some cellular circuits are shaped differently between people, though. Some are very distinct, other ones are a little bit narrower or wider. It does vary.
And then the ramus, like, I know it's the vertical portion, but like where exactly?
How long does it extend?
Yeah, like,
Good question. So, of course, here's our condyle. There's the neck of the condyle.
yeah.
From here all the way down to the gonion. This whole portion is ramus. Basically, as it goes down and before it curves to the horizontal. Make sense?
So if you put a hot spot, so right beside the
I would put my hot spot all along here. Got some sharp teeth.
Yeah, I see it. It's like this
Oh.
big.
What's this, by the way? Hyoid bone. Hyoid bone. Here's another view of just the mandible. This is going to be an AP mandible we're looking at here. Let's look very closely. We once again have our mandibular condyle and coronoid process that are very superimposed. Now, look closely. How do I know this is the condyle? You see this round shape right here. That's the condyle, and that narrow spike is the coronoid process. We go back over here. Round shape right here is the condyle. And then this little superposition here, that little line.
You're talking about the really dense white line?
Yeah, that's the coronoid process right there. Once again, I wish I'd found a better image in this because it's a little more distinct than that. This is not the best example, I apologize. I think I got some more.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
What's the dense white line that's beside ramus on your right side?
Here?
Yeah.
That's just the ramus superimposed on itself. Yeah. That's all just gonna be ramus, body, mentum. And then we can see, of course, the bony nasal septum. Sinus is a little bit more garbled, a little bit hard to see. Why? Because, well, we're not focused on sinuses here. So would I have you worry about labeling sinuses on an image like this? No, because this is not a sinus x-ray, this is a mandible x-ray. So therefore, we're only focused on the mandibular anatomy for the most part. You can barely see the orbits, by the way. You'll still see the orbits. Right there. There's the frontal bone. And I've got a better image than this. I apologize. I don't like that image. Yeah.
Can you point to bony nasal septum from top to bottom?
Starting right here, all the way down.
Oh, it starts in like the middle.
How long is it?
And it looks very long because this is an angled X-ray. Y'all see how the jaw looks like it's kind of a lot more pronounced and elongated? Y'all remember the mandibular, I'm sorry, bless you, the axial mandible you guys did in lab? That's what we're looking at right here. That's that axial mandible X-ray. It stretches it out. Now here's the money shot mandible X-ray right here, guys. I want y'all to really focus on this one as well. This is another image that they're going to ask you a lot on. It's not as difficult to label as it looks because it looks kind of ugly, right? Like a garbled mess. But when we start breaking down the anatomy, it's going to make a little bit more sense. This is that axial lateral oblique that you guys practice in lab, the one that everyone hates so much. So this is to give us a better distinct view of the mandible on a singular side. But let's look closely. I mean, you can really see it here. Y'all see that condyle? I mean, that's pretty. That's that condyloid process fitting into that TMJ. Here is the mandibular notch, and there's the coronoid process. Do we all see that? As I trace my finger on that. Going down, we have the ramus. Ramus goes from neck down to the body where it curves. Horizontal portion is the body. Angle or the gonion right here. Tip of the chin is the mentum. There's our alveolar processes that we can see as well. But that's all we're looking at on that image. The only thing that's not labeled is the alveolar processes, but not a lot to label on this one, but very important to know how to label this image that you see right here. That's that axiolateral oblique mandible. Does that one make sense? Pretty good? Not too bad? Of course, if I ask for the joint, that's what? TMJ. TMJ. How would I have you do a hot spot on a TMJ? I'm going to follow that whole curve around it right here. So basically, the border of that coronoid, I'm sorry, that condyloid process, that whole border around the condyloid process. It's a Monday.
Which, you know how that one, is it like a 15-degree tilt and then it has a turn? 15, 30, 45. Which one's that one?
This one's the one without an angle, is the general survey. Why? Because it's all kind of, nothing's really elongated, it's just giving you a survey of that entire mandible. Look at from the TMJ all the way to the tip of the chin. When we do the other ones, like the one where you angle 15 degrees, you're going to elongate the ramus. There's one where you're going to elongate the body. And those are usually requested specifically by a doctor about what they want to see. But mostly in general, that's why it's called a general survey. In general, we do that general survey that lets them see the entire mandible without distortion. Yes?
The coronoid process, like, I mean, I know it's labeled, but I don't, kind of fade it out.
Yeah, look on the TVs. It's a little bit easier to see. Go from that condyle where it dips down and back around. I know it kind of fades on this projector. It's a little hard to see. But look really closely. Go from the condyle, trace it down. It makes like that little U shape, and then comes back up, close to that back tooth. Can't see my pointer, but you see what I'm talking about? See the outline of it a little bit better.
What are we looking at?
She said it was a little hard to see the coronoid process, which it is on the projector. On TVs, it's a little bit more high def.
So this is the notch?
Here, let me point it out for you. Let me point it out. Let me squeeze back there. All right, guys, so watch my finger. Here's the condyle, the condyloid process. The notch dips right here. Oh, make a mark on the screen.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Right here. And then here's the coronoid process right here. Y'all see it? That's the path of it right there. Liquid crystal display. Liquid crystals moving around. All right, there's a pretty image right there. Can we see the anatomy pretty good on that one? Yes? No?
Yeah.
Another lateral facial bone X-ray. Let's review what we're looking at. Now we can see all those sinus groups. In fact, this is, it's hard to determine because they're both very synonymous in the way they look. This is either a lateral facial bone or a lateral sinus X-ray. They're almost exactly the same. What did I say about a lateral sinus X-ray? That's the what? It's the optimal way to see all four groups. Thank you. Thank you. That's the optimal way to see all four groups, an upright lateral sinus X-ray. So when we look at these and break them down, we can see all 4 groups. When we start at the top, and I want y'all to please pay attention to this because people still mix these sinus groups up. Frontal sinus, really can't miss it, right? Do we all see frontal sinus nice and clear?
Yeah.
It's right in front of the frontal bone. Here's that sella turcica. There's the sphenoid sinus. Now here's where you gotta be careful because the ethmoid is what keeps getting people. Ethmoid is right in front of the sphenoid, right below the frontal, and right above the maxillary. It's sandwiched in between all 3 groups, right here.
You say it's in front of what?
It's literally sandwiched in between all groups. It's in front of the sphenoid, below the frontal, above the maxillary. Right here. It's squished in the middle of all of them.
What's behind the maxillary sinus?
This?
No, the
Part of the,
behind the maxillary.
Behind-
When you look at that, you can like kind of see the person's face.
the one that,
That's scary.
That's likely an air fluid level in the maxillary sinus.
No, I mean, why is it black? The whole bubble, like right behind the
Do you think
maxillary.
that's
Yeah.
This?
Maybe it's fluid.
That's
Muzzy,
probably
Muzzy, go
fluid.
point.
That's probably fluid.
Maybe you got the snot.
This is serious,
It's-
right? Like this whole thing.
Well, this whole thing is the cavity. This is all the maxillary sinus cavity.
Oh, it's the whole thing.
Yes, the maxillary being the biggest.
Oh, okay. I thought it was
Ethmoid
just-
being, yeah, let me just point with my finger so this laser pointer. Here's the frontal again. We see that, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir.
Here's the sphenoid. We good on that?
Mm-hmm.
Here's that big maxillary.
Okay.
That's the biggest one. And this thin one here is the ethmoid, right here. Now, we can really see that cell turcica on that one, yeah? You'll see all those really distinct parts. That's a beautiful cell turcica X-ray. That's a perfect lateral. Here's the front, that being the what again? The saddle is the next point is the, right behind it is the dorsum celli, and then the clivus. Here's that orbital roof. Don't worry about labeling the greater sphenoid ring on a lateral. You're not going to be able to really see that with most of your x-rays. That's super mean to label that. That is not going to be sphenoid wing. That is going to be that cribriform plate that you see right there. Clivus is right at the bottom. So when you look at the posterior clinoid process, like I said, right behind it is the dorsum celli, but then you go down, you see how kind of that horizontal portion right here?
Yeah.
Where that connects, that horizontal portion is the clivus, right here. It's the most inferior part of that cella turcica grouping. The little angle. Here's the mandibular condyle again. You still see that in that T and J? Here's your ramus, angle, body, mentum, your alveolar processes. And then, really hard to see on here, but I think you can see it on the TV screen. Yes, you can. That nasal bone sticking forward right here. About the what?
About the, I can't pronounce it.
Alveolar processes.
So where exactly do you point? Do you point at the very, like at the bottom of, like?
So, really great cheat code on that. If I'm asking you to label alveolar processes, you got quite a range to work with. The trick to make sure you remember is, if I see alveolar process, make sure I'm saying mandible or maxillary bone. Because there are 2 distinct spots. So if I say maxillary, you want to follow the roots of the teeth. Don't put it on the teeth, but the roots of the teeth. Same for the mandible, alveolar process of the mandible. You got this whole range to work with right here. Follow the roots, but not the top of the teeth. Make sense?
Are you gonna have, like a tighter box for hotspot?
I mean, we're going to get tighter and tighter, yes, but keep in mind when it comes to alveolar processes, that's quite a range to work with. I'm not going to be like super tight, super tight, super tight. I'm going to like do this.
Oh.
Make sense?
What about with the clinoid process?
That's
Or-
going to be pretty tight.
Okay.
And that's a very important region to make sure you label correctly.
Okay.
Where is it?
Posterior clinoid process, anterior clinoid process.
Do you think this patient's in like okay shape? Like, I don't know if those are just air pockets or what. It looks like they've got a lot of
I
fractures.
think they're probably having a really bad sinus infection.
Those
because
are
of that.
fractures?
The
These are
mandible.
fractures. I don't think so.
What about in the mandible?
It's about this right here. What you're seeing is air pockets from the trachea. Right here. That's the air-filled trachea. And this is more sinus and fluid levels we're seeing here.
Then there's C-spine?
C-spine? What about the C-spine?
Are the spinous processes connected?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, they are. The coronoid, yes. Coronoid, a little bit hard to see on here, guys. But here's the condyle once again. Coronoid is right here. Now, would I have you label it if it looks like that? No. That'd be just cruel. If I'm having you label a coronoid, guys, you're going to distinctly see it. Keep that in mind. But most of these, you can clearly see the condyles, or the condyloid processes. They are very distinct. Coronoid gets kind of lost in translation a little bit. It'd have to be very distinct for me to have you label that. Keep that in mind.
Can you say? You have to go.
Yeah, my fault. Can you point out the superimposed inferior nasal concha?
On this, no. So that's a good question, by the way.
It's not the thing that's pointing straight down right in the next
Like
to the
right here?
maxillary sinus?
It's not. So one thing to keep in mind with that, I'm glad you brought that up, Jay, because that's one of the facial bones we went over. That's one of the few facial bones we're actually not going to see on an X-ray. It's so small, and we don't do a view that's going to release it from superposition to get a good view of it. How would you see those on a CT? If you're doing a coronal view on a CT going through the face, you'll see those curly scrolls like really clear. But on a regular X-ray, it gets lost in all the superposition. You're not going to see it distinctly enough. If I was going to say about where it was, it's going to be in this region right here.
Okay.
Yeah, but you're not going to be able to make that out.
Because I was looking at that line that's going down, I'm like, that doesn't look like it would be curling. But if they're curling inwards, like
It's just all kind of superimposed on itself. All right, it's just another yes.
On that last view, since you were on this side, you was blocking the where the process was. Huh?
The what now?
What was that? What the question she asked?
The
Yeah,
coronal
you was
process.
on this side, so I couldn't see. Can you stand
Oh,
on that
yeah.
side? This side?
Condyle, notch, process. But this
Okay.
one's so superimposed you can barely make it out.
Can you see it on this view though? The
Which one?
conchi?
On this one?
Yeah.
Okay. What are we looking for?
The inferior nasal conchi?
No, so once again,
This.
for whatever reason, those bones are so tiny and the way they superimpose, you're not going to be able to distinctly see them separate. You'd have to like remove all this, Jay. You have to like take all this out.
So what is
See
it?
that?
So what's this piece here? It's just this tiny little
What is
part.
that? That's part of the ethmoid bone.
Oh.
Yeah, just trust me on that. You're not going to see it on a regular X-ray, but you will see it on a CT image.
Okay.
Well, let's move on. We've got a lot to get through here, guys. This is just another Waters. In fact, I think it's the same one I showed you before, but we're only labeling the sinus portions. Why? We do a Waters for sinuses as well. We do a Waters, we do a lateral, we do a Caldwell, we do an SMV to show sinuses. So great image to take a picture of. It shows all those distinct sinus groups. By the way, this is another example of someone with a sinus infection. Does anybody know what sinus is infected? Looking at that image. Very closely. I heard one person say the right answer.
Right frontal.
The correct answer is the right maxillary.
Ah.
Now, if you look at these side by side, see how the one on the left has a nice black color? But the one on the right, see how it's grayed out? That's that fluid in there. That's what it looks like. So if you ever see a sinus x-ray and it's very gray, that means they have a sinus infection or a lot of mucus in there, a lot of fluid.
All the boots.
All them boogers, all them boats. Oh, I guess I did that backwards. We're getting to the end of the semester. There's no telling what I'm going to do anymore, guys. This is another view of what we call an SMV. I put this in here because on the SMV, even though we're mostly going to see things like the zygomatic bone and the arches, we can see a couple of the sinuses as well on this. We have to look very closely. There's only one, and this one you can see very clearly, that being this one right here. Does anybody know what that one is?
the one we couldn't see on all the other ones.
So one of the ones you couldn't see on the other ones, you're correct. This is a view that allows us. This is a view that allows us to see it a little bit better. Sphenoid. We can see it on the lateral, but on the waters it was a little superimposed. This is going to let us see that sphenoid sinus really clearly right here. Big round bubble down here below that hard palate. This is that hard palate, by the way, that we're talking about. So we have the head back. We're shooting straight through the throat, basically. There's the tip of the mandible, mandibular symphysis or mentum. The zygomatic bones. These are your cheekbones, by the way, side by side. What's the other names for this bone right here? Zygoma and malar. Here's the arch. They look like the bucket handles again. Y'all see that? What forms each of these arches? Well, not distinct landmarks, but what two bones form that? Let me reword that. What two bones form one zygomatic arch? Zygomatic bone and temporal bone. Temporal bone, correct. Ooh. That's just something I put in there if you want to take a picture of that. That kind of labels all this anatomy we've been talking about. I recommend you take a picture on the TV screen, though, it's a little bit clearer. I think I included this on your practice sheets as well, but not mistaken.
This was Jimmy Neutron, right? This was Jimmy Neutron, right?
Jimmy Neutron.
Are you gonna have a
Hydrocephaly kid? Genius?
Now, I know who Jimmy Neutron is. You're saying that this patient is Jimmy Neutron? Oh, okay.
It's okay, it was a Monday joke.
My joke fell flat this morning, too. My Good Friday joke, I thought that was pretty good.
You saved that for Friday.
Y'all ready to be here on Friday?
It would have been a good Friday. See,
Okay.
Watsy laughed. That one was funny.
I see. I just didn't have anything today. All right. Here you go, Jalen. We'll take a break from talking. I've been taking all your
No, you're fine.
teaching away. Go ahead.
So, quiz time.
He's okay with it.
Which of the following facial bone is unpaired? The vomer, correct? And what does it protrude from? Which facial bone? Or,
The vomer is a fish.
I mean, it's a facial bone. What is it? Anterior.
Oh, maxilla.
Maxilla. Anterior.
Perpendicular.
No. It's so you know how the mandible is like right here, and it kind of protrudes from the bottom.
Of
That's
the
what it-
mandible?
Yeah,
Of the maxilla.
and the maxilla.
It's on top of the
Maxilla. It's on top. Interior of the maxilla.
In front of
Okay.
another bone behind the maxilla that protrudes up. It's in front of the palatine.
Question number 2. The anterior nasal spine is an aspect of the blank bone.
No.
No. Interior nasal spine is.
Zygomatic. Nope. D.
That's I put that because and we went over this now. It's tricky because it makes you think nose.
It's here. It's
So
the
it's
maxillary,
maxillary.
yeah.
So the account on this, guys. I didn't hear
I
you.
thought
I'm
you said
sorry.
zygomatic. I'm sorry.
I said
I'm quite
My
good.
fault, my fault.
Maxillary.
But keep that in mind, guys, because you see the word nasal, you think up here, right?
Mhm.
But anterior nasal spine is below your nose on the maxillary bone. That in mind.
We're all good? Just thinking. All right. Question number 3. The alveolary process is an aspect of which bone?
Maxillary.
And what else?
Mandible.
Mandible. All right, I'll set.
Are the gomphoses like underneath alveolar processes, or?
So gomphosis just refers to a joint categorization of that process.
Chilling, hold on.
All right, on to the next. We're all good?
As it says, hold on.
He said, hold on 1 minute,
Oh,
please.
my good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question. The lacrima is delivered from a word meaning
Tear.
Why don't you put tip up?
tear.
Here.
Yeah,
In Spanish is lighting, so there you go.
all right. Tear, correct? Awesome. You got this
Okay.
one.
That's all I know.
All right, next question. Which facial bone forms an aspect of the bony nasal septum?
Oh.
Actually, it's both of them. I'm sorry. That should be C and D.
So, horizontal plate of the ethmoid bone, perpendicular plate of the ethmoid bone.
My apologies, guys. That's C and D on that one.
And on the bony nasal septum, which one is the bottom portion? Vomer. And the top portion is?
I think what I meant to put on that question is which facial bone forms the superior aspect of the bony nasal septum. That'd be that. Like, inferior aspect would be vomer.
So the perpendicular plate is there.
That's what means down. Yes.
Alright, on to the next question. What is the name of the process of the mandible in which the lower teeth are embedded?
B.
Correct. Perfect. Yeah, we know this one. Okay. Next question. The TMJ is formed by the union of what mandibular anatomy and the temporal bone? What you say, conoid or? I had a little mix. Lloyd, okay.
I know they start with the C.
Awesome. Lloyd.
A lot of C's going.
Wow.
Any, many, money,
Noid, coid, noid.
Where's the coracoid process located?
Right
Right
here.
here. Awesome.
Shoulder.
Alright, people get that one confused. Alright, on to the next.
Oh, this one here just for random. I'm sorry.
Okay.
This is good to know. We're about to get to sciences where we'll talk about this, but this is good one to go ahead and write down.
Which paranasal sinus is the last one to develop?
So it's C.
I would say it's that.
We're going with C?
Because we're guessing. We always guess.
Which one? Which one?
Was that
You said C? I know, that's a... There's no sinus back here. Alright, we're going with ethmoid? Alright, ethmoid.
Oh, it was frontal?
That's why you always go with C.
That's actually a good
guess.
fact to write down, guys. The frontal is the last to fully develop.
Test question. It goes by too fast.
Yeah, the color didn't stay on there.
So frontal.
I was transferring this over, it didn't transfer very well.
Make it even. That's how you feel in PRE.
They'll figure it out on their
What?
own.
Oh.
That's how I'm
Yes,
feeling.
for real.
Like that.
It's the last of the sign of all sciences to develop.
Frontal.
The last to
Let me
fully
see
develop.
When does the ethmoid develop?
They all start developing early in birth.
Okay.
They develop at different rates, and the frontal's gonna be the last one like fully mature and finished growing.
Wait, can you
We're gonna get to that.
hit that color one more
section.
time?
We're gonna
Just
talk
quick,
about
bro.
those.
I'm gonna
I thought
take a
that babies
picture
didn't know how to
with
use
live
their,
so I can like edit it.
nose when they were breathing.
You got it? Did you get that?
I'm gonna edit it.
Oh,
Because it's a
okay.
live photo.
Not breathing.
Okay. I like that.
As soon as they get the nose unclogged, they start breathing through their nose.
Okay.
On to the next. Which of the following bones form the base of the orbit?
Chin.
Where those cheekbones are.
Jill.
Good job.
Each.
Good job. Good job.
Alright, we all said zygoma, correct?
Honestly,
Alright, next question. Which of the following bones make up the most of the lateral wall of the orbit?
You're right. With that first instinct, you're right. It's the same answer for both questions. Those cheekbones, think about they go, they curve up.
So would
Which one?
that one before was the inferior?
Yeah.
They can go yes.
Base.
Of the base, right?
and the lateral.
Yeah.
What does that
Leaving the
mean?
wall
First
is
and
the
lateral.
yes.
Everybody good on this one? Next. Which of the following is a foramen located in the orbit?
A.
Yeah, A. Everything.
What's the answer?
Yeah.
A. Okay. Yeah. Great.
Not a trick question. It's in the answer.
Can we, what's the order of those in the sphenoid?
Rotundum ovale spinosa.
ROS.
Let me think for a second. Rotundum ovale spinosa.
Thank
Do
you.
it like this, Mr. Knight. Say it like this. Rotate it. No, the
Like
stick.
you're casting a spell.
Say it. Well, yeah.
Rotundum ovale spinosa. Harry Potter spell.
On to the next.
You know exactly what to do.
Okay,
Oh,
yeah.
are we sorting it now? Yep.
Don't talk about the makeup awards. By the way, this image here, guys.
Remember that vine?
Know this image inside and out.
Waiting for this
Gold
one.
star. Know how to label that image.
We on to facial bones? What we on?
Facial
So
bones.
orbits. We've gone over all the cranial and facial bones. Now we're just going to talk about orbits, what makes up the orbits, and the sinus groups.
Alright, everybody ready to write? We need a second. I'll give you 3 seconds. No coffee.
Ah, that's fine. There's creamer in the fridge.
Just creamer?
I'm
Drink it out the bottle?
No, I'm just kidding.
Everybody's all good? Okay. So today we'll be going over the orbit. Orbit is basically the eye socket, right? Where the eye is holding in. And test question, how many orbits are there? 2. I ain't know it was that boring. You got 7 bones, okay? So we got it's basically quite similar to what we learned with the facial bones. So we have the frontal, that makes up the top portion of the orbit, located right here.
Top border.
Top border. And then we have the splenoid, that's located more in the back, over here.
If you were to take the eyeball out, look straight back, that back wall of the eye socket is that greater winglet sphenoid.
And then we have the ethmoid, located right here. Lacrima, right here, the green portion right here. And then we have the zygoma and the maxilla, making up the base of the orbit right here. And on the lateral wall, you know how we said in the little test question that we had, it makes the lateral wall and then the base of the orbit. So that can be a test question right there. What makes up the lateral and inferior portion of the orbit? Zygoma, right? Great. And then these little pockets right here, this is where the eye kind of connects to the brain.
Meaning the nerves go.
Yeah, the nerves go straight to
And the one that people always miss, by the way, is the one that very central portion, that little tiny blue one, that's that palatine bone. That's the one people often forget about.
Yeah, you want to highlight that one. That's
Tip of
real
that
small.
palatine bone.
Can you see that on an X-ray?
You see it on an X-ray?
The palatine bone?
You would on a CT.
CT.
Yeah. Orbit X-rays have become obsolete. I've done one orbit X-ray my entire career. It was on an inmate.
They got punched in.
We were looking at the walls of the orbit to see if they were fractured.
I saw one at
An orbit X-ray? They're super rare. They just usually send us a CT.
Yeah, she had to pull up a book.
Every time.
And how many bones do we have? 7.
In the orbit.
In the orbit. Yes. Okay. So the orbit, it's a cone-shaped bone-walled cavity formed by 7 bones, and then it's made by 3 cranial bones, right? The frontal, ethmoid, and splenic bone. And for the facial, those are 4 right there. So we have the lacrimal, the palatine, the maxillary, and the zygomatic. And
That should say sphenoid. I'm sorry, not sphenoid.
So it's,
Sorry.
it's
That's
not
spheno-
sphenic or
That's sphenoid,
sphenoid?
not sphenoid.
and then would they have to know, like, there's 3 cranial bones and
Yes.
4? Okay.
3 cranial, 4 facial.
So write that down right there.
What was that? Cream.
Which one?
Teeth, cranial bones.
What about the cranial
No,
bones?
the cranial bones.
Yeah, so 3 cranial bones and then 4 facial bone makes up the orbit. And then on this, the palatine will be where?
Palatine, you can barely see it. It is right here.
Small little.
Right here.
Okay, so right in the center of the
But
orbit.
can they name these parts? It's got some clues on there because it's got letters that match what bone
Okay.
we're looking at.
So what is-
Don't notice that.
This is M right here. What is M?
Maxillary.
Maxilla, correct? And
It's like
The M's like tracing right here.
It goes up into it.
And a good way you can tell the difference between the maxilla and the zygoma is there's like a little suture right here. So it kind of separates it. So you have the zygoma right here, creating the inferior and the lateral border right here.
we don't need to know the name of that suture. Right?
Unless you just want to.
What's it?
I don't even know what it is.
And then E, what is that one right here?
Ethmoid.
Ethmoid, E for ethmoid. And then the L right here? Yeah, it's just right in front of the ethmoid. And then S, located directly to the back of the orbit. And then Z already went over this one, right? Zygoma, right? That's the lateral wall right here. And then do we go over these?
We're going to.
Okay. Everybody has this down? Alright, how many cranial bones make up the orbit?
7.
Three. Okay, there we
Oh,
go.
we got you.
Three. So 3 cranial and 4 facial. And how many bones do we have in the skull? 8. That's it?
How
Okay.
many bones in the skull?
Skull, yeah, we're going back.
Cranium/skull.
8 for you.
8, right.
14 for you.
And how many facial bones do we have?
14.
Okay, awesome. So, part 2 of the orbit. So, parts of the orbit, we have the roof, the medial wall, the lateral wall, and the floor. Those are the main portions of the orbit. And then the base is easily palpable, palpable, shape interior circumference. So, so this is basically saying right here, everybody can touch the bottom of their orbit, correct? So the apex corresponds to the optic foramen, and the apex is located where directly, Mr. Donahue?
That's like the very back wall of the orbit. Like you take the eyeball out and look straight back. You have that optic foramen where the optic nerve travels, so you can see next to your brain. That's the apex. So back of that wall kind of like narrows down to like an apex sharp shape. If that makes sense. Question?
This might be stupid.
No such thing as a stupid question.
It doesn't flip like the way that they're like behind, the way that the bones are behind each one.
It does flip left and right, yes. Keep that in mind. So it's like a mirror image, left and right.
And the optic foramen, you know those little holes that we saw in the orbit? Those are basically where the foramens are, right?
Yeah, we're gonna, I think it's on the next
Oh,
slide.
okay.
Know that the long axis of the orbit, we'll go ahead and read that last one.
Okay, so long axis of each orbit is directly, oblique, posteriorly, and medially at 37 degrees to the MSP, and superiorly at 30 degrees angle from the OML.
Know those two numbers. It's just how it's situated in the face, essentially.
Test question.
We're gonna draw a line from the front of the orbit to the back of it. It's gonna be sitting at that angle. And we're in anatomical position. Don't worry, we don't go over the parts of the eyeball. One less thing you have to worry about. We're not optometry school.
Did you have to learn that when you were in extra school?
I did.
You did?
We had to learn everything.
Everything,
You
huh?
know, all the cranial nerves.
The cranial nerves?
Yes. They like to torture us though.
Why?
But they like to torture us in my school. They were quite evil.
What about medicines? No?
Yeah,
Medicine
I had to take an actual nursing pharmacology class, learn every medication. Because our department at my school was out of the nursing department.
Was that a nursing appointment? So it was just that particular facility that was on it?
It was part of the bachelor program too. I did all this extra
All that
stuff.
Made you into the person you are now.
It did.
And you went to McNeese, right?
Yes.
You said that was a test question?
Which one?
Where I went to school, yes.
The
The last one's, yeah, it's definitely good to know those numbers.
And where's that apex located in the orbit?
Behind that.
Where?
Behind that.
Ah, yeah, behind. It's like the most posterior part of the orbit. That's where the apex would be.
So when you say cone shape, you mean it's kind of like a funnel?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
like
it goes from like circle.
if you were to look at the orbits from like a side view, you notice that the opening like it has that open funnel here, and then it narrows down as you go back. It actually makes it a funnel type shape.
And then
And
the
towards
back
the
Where's
point
the
would be the
apex
apex.
So this is the superior part of the orbit. So the wall that's on the back of the orbit. Does that make sense? So it'd be this. It'd be this whole back part. That'd be the apex of it.
You said superior?
Superior.
No, posterior.
Posterior?
Posterior. Everybody good on this slide? Everyone solid? Alright, going to the next. So, third slide of the orbit serves primarily as a bone socket for the eyeball. Major and frequent radiograph openings, orbit foramen, superior and inferior orbital sulcis.
In other words, what that's saying there is if we're going to do x-rays of the orbits, that's the two things we're going to look at. Optic foramina and superior and inferior orbital sulci, which is basically just the walls of the orbit. So we're going to look at the foramina and the walls if we're going to do x-rays of the orbits.
And then superior orbital fissure, cleft between great and lesser wing of the sphenoid. And then we also have the inferior orbital fissure, narrow cleft extending from the lower anterior lateral aspect of the sphenoid body, anteriorly and lateral between the floor and lateral wall of the orbit. You have a picture of this one right here? Okay. My next one.
That's all you need to know on this so far, guys. It's just 3 slides on orbits. They've actually gutted out a large portion of what you need to know about orbits, thankfully. It used to be a lot more in-depth. They keep eliminating more of this head work, thankfully, with each revision of the curriculum. Yes?
When we see the fissures on the x-rays, are they going to be black lines or dark white lines? Or
Honestly, no. I think I have some pictures when it gets positioning. An orbital X-ray is actually very ugly. It's really hard to really see anything. I'll show you when we get to it. They're not the prettiest of X-rays. Now, if you do a CT, yeah, you don't see all that high detail. But an X-ray just doesn't really give you the best view, which is why most of the time if someone has some kind of orbital fracture or compromised orbit, they send them straight to CT because that quality is just so superior and gives you that higher defined detail.
They're putting the orbit, the side of interest to the border, right?
Say that again?
They're putting the side of interest to the
Oh,
border, right,
yes.
for the orbit.
Yes.
what differentiates the fissure between a suture? Is it that like when they connect a lot deeper, or
Sorry, say it one more time.
what's the difference between a suture and a fissure? Like,
Suture and a fissure. Fissure is more like the way I remember it, fissure is almost like a ditch.
like it's got
It's like
something here.
like that, and a suture is 2 connecting points. Yeah, that's how I've always remembered it. You think
So
of a
they're
fissure
not-
when you see a fissure in the ground, it kind of looks like a ditch. Like you said, like a little V shape.
Mhm. So they're not completely disconnected. Okay.
Everybody has this down?
No.
And they're good? Alright.
Get ready for y'all's first break.
Yeah.
Take a quick 15-minute break, guys.